Hello, everybody, and welcome to Lady Aria Starflower of Sophia. And today we're going to be doing a Guardian Alliance channel messages about disability, DNA distortions, and societal issues. We just want to preface and let people know before people watch this video and also do a trigger warning that this video is going to be talking about some very sensitive topics that might trigger people, but we do believe that this is a discussion or a topic that people need to talk about and discuss as a community, as well in the SSP Starseed community and also the spiritual community as well. So we just want to preface that before watching this video.
Yeah, and so some of the main points we're going to be talking today about are on this thumbnail here. So this message was a channel message delivered from the High Council of Sirius in the Ninth Dimension, Guardian Alliance channel transmission. And so basically, the thesis we're presenting today is that societal and cultural distortions manifest themselves physically in the DNA structure of the gene pool, leading to what we think of as birth defects or disabilities. And I know maybe that seems like we're drawing lines where lines aren't drawn, but from a higher dimensional point of view, higher dimensional beings and ETs do not have disabilities. You've never met a blind Pleiadian, you've never met a Syrian in a wheelchair. These things don't really exist in higher dimensional societies and race lines. And so yeah, the High Council series was very adamant that we put this out, and they said that we're probably going to get a lot of feedback on it. People are going to have strong opinions on this, and that is completely entirely welcome. Um, we also want to preface this. Let's move to the disclaimer here that so disclaimer: nothing in this video or anything said by either Aria, Lady Aria of Sophia, or Audrey, Lady Aria of Sophia, or Kavi, Lord Kavi Pulaha, is or will ever be medical, financial, or legal advice of any kind or sort. Please reference or access resources from a licensed medical professional, legal financial professional as well with all of your needs, if they as they are licensed, registered, and fully trained on these issues in alignment with the current legal structure in the United States. We're broadcasting out of the United States today. Again, we are not licensed medical, legal, financial professionals. Please seek the guidance of a licensed medical professional if you are experiencing any health issues. All right, got that out of the way. Let's get started, y'all. So the role of DNA. So DNA, we've been taught in school that DNA is kind of this structure, and it's just like, oh, it's just a ladder, and it helps you grow and things, and it's this general thing that's not important. Well, DNA actually stores energy and stores experiences. It's kind of like a actively learning microchip, or almost like an AI within you. It's like sentient in its own right. And my DNA connects to the DNA of everyone else in our society. So we have like a collective consciousness, right? When you think of like the Schumann resonance and the collective consciousness, the frequency of the collective consciousness, DNA is the physical manifestation of that, physical expression of that. So it's alive and it's part of all of us, and all of us are linked through our DNA to that. And so when we talk about like inbreeding is a major distortion to this DNA. And it's been happening for thousands of years and still affects the DNA pool in the here and now. There's still inbreeding going on. And the inbreeding is not, we're not pointing fingers, we're not calling anyone any names of any type. This was notably done via forced breeding programs based on conflict, based on war, based on arranged marriages. And so this has been happening for thousands and millions of years. This is not something that's new, but it actually is a big issue.
The reason why this is becoming a big issue has a lot to do with sperm donation and egg donations right now. There was a major Netflix documentary that was released. There's even movies about this where a lot of these fertility clinics are not keeping track of how many kids are born through sperm donations or egg donations. So this is a huge cultural distortion that also needs to be fixed as well.
Yeah, I agree. So let me continue. So let's talk about society and distortion. So when a society or a race line, right, a race line shares the DNA together. It's a collective consciousness, which is the DNA, which is the consciousness of the race line, if you want to think of it that way. When a society or race line is starting to collapse, the DNA starts to collapse as a physical manifestation of that. So this manifests physically as birth defects and disabilities. So maybe you think we're drawing lines where lines don't exist. That's great. But from a higher dimensional point of view, this stuff is very, very straightforward, very obvious. This is not for debate. When you're speaking to ninth dimensional Syrians, Guardian Alliance, Law of One abiding Syrians, highest and best handling for all, not just oneself. So this is from a higher dimensional point of view, this is very, very straightforward. But down here in these dense lower heavens, third, fourth, fifth lower heavens, here on Earth 606, it's very much so not that apparent. And we were all kind of raised to think that, oh, if you have a disability, then we just need to be nice to this person. And obviously you shouldn't be mean to someone with disabilities. I never said that. But what we were saying is from a macro, from a third person point of view, from a macro scale point of view, a societal point of view, looking down at it from a higher dimension, these disabilities shouldn't really exist. And if they exist, we should be working them out of our gene pool actively. So let me read some of these quotes here from the channel message. So societal and cultural distortions are physically manifested in the DNA. In quotes, if they truly cared about their race, their being us, Syrians are speaking to us about our race line. If they truly cared about their race, they would breed accordingly and breed out some of these distortions that cause birth defects. So we can do something about this positively. In quotes, it's not normal or not right to be born with birth defects. It's a distortion that doesn't need to exist. So, in quotes, your society thinks it's okay to be born with disabilities. It's not. So, you don't see blind Pleiadians, you don't see Syrians in wheelchairs. You've never met an ET who has disabilities. Some of the gray aliens do have disabilities, and that's because they chose self-mutilation with technology, and that's why they can't reproduce. So it leads to this path where you have to augment with technology, and then you can't reproduce. So really, these birth defects have to be managed and taken care of on a societal, a macro level, a race line DNA level for all of us, or there's some bad consequences, right? We all want to be able to mate and have children and all these types of things. Um, so yeah, take after these higher dimensional races that don't have these disabilities, rather than like the Greys who have kind of self-mutilated themselves to where they now cannot reproduce. They can't even clone themselves. That doesn't sound fun. Okay, so it might be a little repetitive here, but we're just going to touch these things a few different times. So the main messages of the video: societal and cultural issues express themselves physically through DNA. So if a society does not solve its cultural societal issues, these distortions get expressed through DNA physically. So maybe you're like, oh, I'm really hungry for money, and maybe money is my religion, and I'm focused too hard on money. Well, how does that perpetuate in a larger societal aspect? Well, the medical industry should be focused on care solely, but is actually focused on profit. So, like, because you're too excited about going to work, and making all this money and too focused on money, that has reverberations in the societal complex to where ultimately children are being born with defects when they should not be. That's what we're saying. And I know that sounds like, oh my gosh, Kavi's trying to say that because I love money, I caused this child to have a disability. You didn't directly cause that child to have a disability. We're not saying you gave a disability to someone or you punished them with a disability. We're not saying anything like that. But from a larger, looking down from 9D onto Earth 606, and 345D, these distortions are really obvious. And if we all kind of came together as a society and said, oh my gosh, maybe we should be less focused on the profit motive, and maybe our in quotes healthcare industry focused on profit and quarterly revenue and all these things should be more focused on, hey, how can we provide care to people and actually get them cured, not just get them treated? And then, oh, the treatment is like a payment plan, and oh, there's money coming in. It's like an annuity. Oh my gosh, what a great business model. Let's set up 10 new shops. And
We just
it's
want
not
to
supposed to be enterprising, it's supposed to be healing.
we just want to preface that this is our frustration with American healthcare system. We don't really know what it's like in other countries
Yeah, we're both American.
about their issues with their healthcare system. So a lot of the healthcare system in the United States is for profit and not really designed to actually like heal people. And it's more designed for profit base. If a lot of our research was done, like medical research was done, we would have proper protocols in order to help women and children and people with different um issues with their health and stuff. So that's essentially what we just want to be clear on and let people know about that.
And holding the slide here, we're very pro natural healing, and sound and frequency based healing. We're going to talk about it more later in the podcast. or in the transmission here at the end. But other societies have healing as well, but it's not so based on oh, you have this dis-ease, right? We're gonna tell you you have this disorder that's stuck with you for the rest of your life, and then give you medication for the rest of your life, and that becomes a profit stream for this business that's called a hospital. They more have, oh my gosh, you have this energetic imbalance in your field. Let's fix you energetically. And maybe there's a physical component to that. Maybe there's some type of surgery that's required. We're not saying that hospitals have no place. We're not saying that at all. But uh, the healthcare industry completely, totally misses the energetic component because when you think about it, energetic healing is not very profitable. When you're giving someone a medication they have to take for the rest of their life, it's very, very profitable. So this is why we talk about the for-profit industry being really, really kind of dehumanizing. So let me talk more about disabilities on this slide here. So disabilities distort. Why disabilities are such a big deal are they distort quality of life. So according to the Syrians, it makes it impossible to have a normal life or have sufficient quality of life, a normal quality of life in a just an average sense. So in quotes, disabilities take free will away from beings to access quality of life for their highest and best timeline. So if you're wanting to have a law of one existence, right, you have your highest and best timeline, and then you have the highest and best timeline for all, and you're merging those, so you're in alignment with the law of one, highest and best timeline for all. If you had a disability that affects your quality of life, this is going to take away your free will ability to co-create and to manifest that highest and best timeline for you because you have a disability and you were born with it because of essentially inbreeding mistakes that have happened for thousands and millions of years because of these for-profit kind of distortions that come about when you're focused on money and not just care. So again, disabilities take free will away from beings to access quality of life in the highest and best timeline. So it's a huge it's actually a free will. It's a free will issue. It's not just a healthcare issue. It's not a healthcare industry issue. It is a free will issue when you're looking at it from a higher dimensional point of view. So like free will needs to be upheld on all levels for the law of one to be upheld. So that's why we're talking about it here. It's really straightforward from the higher dimensions, but down here it's just there's so many distortions. Everyone was raised to think about the healthcare industry as this magical hospital that'll heal you and cure you. A lot of times it's less focused on the cure. There's no energetic. We're not doing meditation. The doctor doesn't prescribe meditation most often. They don't prescribe healing baths. They don't prescribe, these med beds and these frequency healing technologies are not really, really established yet. We're still focused on giving people medications and then making a money stream off that, which is an inherent distortion. So our medical system is built around profit, aka monetary profit is the ultimate goal of the medical industry, not care, not cure. So we're not focused on curing disease as much as we are as, hey, do we have a treatment for this? And then can we put that treatment out and make a profit on it? And if we can, then the company will fund that research, right? So the research is based on, will this be profitable in the future, right? And that's why when we see these pills, diabetes medications and things being hundreds and hundreds of times more expensive than they should be, it's because of these healthcare companies have a profit model. And that profit model is, oh, there's this many people in the country with this disease, and this is the revenue we want to come from this project. So if we should just charge this price per treatment. And then, the person gets the treatment and they get the bill, and it is just astronomically expensive. And you know, it's your right to have healthcare and access to healing technologies and healing abilities because there are going to be some people in the culture who are more healed and less healed, and we can all do our part and help each other. I mean, there's really not a reason why we should be charging for healthcare or medical care at all, let alone designing, basing the research funding comes from, oh my gosh, how much money can we make on this in the future? Let's do a revenue presentation and present it to our board of directors so we can support our quarterly profits and keep our stock price high. Those are all inherent distortions where distortions do not exist. So in quotes, treatments and keeping people sick and requiring constant treatment maximizes profit. Curing and preventing distortions or illnesses or dis-ease, right? So dis-ease is just simply being not in a state of ease. It doesn't mean that doesn't necessarily mean you have some disability, something that's going to ruin you for the rest of the life. And yes, there are disabilities that stick with people for the rest of their lives. But essentially there's this whole profit narrative built around, oh, come into my office, I'm going to tell you you have this disease and I'm going to give you pills for it. And maybe you don't have that disease, or maybe that disease can be cured in a way that the medical industry hasn't yet recognized. A lot of people have come in, they've done, med bed treatments, they've done frequency healing treatments with the Rife machine. Dr. Royal Rife invented frequency healing in the 1940s. So this is old technology. And essentially, oh, I was miraculously cured of cancer because I use this Rife frequency healing device. And it's like, how did that happen? The doctor is bewildered. And the doctor is bewildered because the doctor has been blinded by the profit motive. They're not, a lot of, cancers and things can really be treated with, different types of frequency healing devices. This is well documented. Dr. Royal Rife came out with this in the 1940s, and the medical industry has kind of pushed it aside in favor of pills. And everyone likes pills, great. But if you can heal yourself energetically and on a frequency level, pills can maybe support that or help that regimen. But the pill itself is maybe not going to do it. If you're talking about an energetic issue in your field that is manifesting itself as a disease, because everything is energetic before it is physical. So, in quotes, our medical industry creates and perpetuates societal distortions around money. These distortions are expressed as disabilities, dis-ease, or DNA issues, and it's often kind of pushed on people that, oh, you have this disorder, you have that disorder, and many times it's just you have an incoherent field because there's energy work that is required, and it's not some disorder you're stuck with for the rest of your life. There are people who do have actual disabilities, sickle cell,
You can't mention.
I can't mention that. There are all sorts of types of things that actually do um, that are longer term things that we're not really speaking about. We're just kind of speaking about energy work here. So let me continue on with the slide. I don't want to say too much. Again, speak with a licensed medical professional. I have no ability to speak about sickle cell. Um, so healthcare professionals are more akin to kind of medical torturers than caregivers. Even if they mean well, the entire system is bottom up, built on profit. Top down, bottom up, built up on profit. You cannot fund a medical facility unless you have a revenue projection. All right. And there should be no revenue projection in your healing center. Your healing center is about healing people, not generating profit. These distortions are innate to the system because money funds all of its operations. Um, all regulations are made through this federation corporate controlled system. So we talked about the Federal Reserve being owned by the Federation, which is the same thing as a galactic federation. Ashtar Command is the military arm for that, and it's large in a larger sense known as the Federation. And so these Federation corporations are kind of making the regulations here. So there's inherent distortions in the entire complex, bottom up, top down. The whole thing is quite distorted. So we have these governments and corporations posing as governments in the Federation system. The Federation owns the Federal Reserve. We already talked about this. This whole complex is distorted, and it creates negative outcomes in terms of health and healing, and that leads to DNA distortions, which ruins our race line and causes disabilities. No one likes disabilities.
Not only that, but right now a lot of healthcare professionals are dealing with a lot of angry, I guess, clients or angry patients because they're not receiving the care. They're not receiving the answers that they're looking for what they're looking for in order to help heal them and help have them have a quality of life. So that's also another huge issue that's also going on right now in the healthcare industry.
Yeah, and everything is energetic before it's physical. So when we have a medical industry that's not really focused on energetic healing, like next to your doctor's office, there should probably be a yoga center or a meditation center with sound healing and frequency healing and crystals and I just I have never been to a hospital where that's existed.
Like, I want to preface that I think it was like last year or so, I made a post on my YouTube page about if anybody can come forward if they ever seen an ET with disabilities. But everywhere that I have researched in the Sarsi community, um there really isn't a whole lot of ET races that have disabilities or even talk about that they have disabilities in their culture, is because they're all about trying to have a better quality of life, and one of that quality of life is to have a very good healthcare system.
Yeah.
So we just want to like preface, like, we're not trying to bash anyone with disabilities or anything like that. We just want to like preface, like, this is something that's not talked about a whole lot in the Sarsi community. We showcase all these different ET races, and they talk about wonderful different things about ascension, but no one's talking about this type of particular stuff in this type of community. And so we just want to like preface that this is open for debate, this is open for discussion, and we want to people to start talking about this and start to discuss this. And we understand that this is a very sensitive topic, this can be very triggering. But when it comes down to the Cersei community, I have never seen a picture or a discussion posts about ET races having disabilities. It's all about people wanting to talk about medbed technology and help cure them and when that's going to be released. And we're not talking about how we can get to that point of society where we can start having medical beds and start having the actual discussions of what is morally ethical and what is not morally ethical when it comes to this type of topic.
Yeah, I agree fully. Let me continue on with the slide here. So, um, maybe we covered this a little before, but we're going to reiterate: no ET races have. My grammar is bad there, but ET races. There are not any ET races that have disabilities whatsoever. I put extra not there. From a higher dimensional point of view, disabilities are these ET races see a person living with disabilities, and they view that 100% as medical torture. Um, so medical torture, societal torture, purely and completely. So the Syrians, when we see someone, when the Syrians see someone in a wheelchair, they think about that as us in a societal level torturing that person. And I know that is a really, really, really strong take. I know that's a very absolute law of one take. Maybe that's a very strong take. Maybe that's too strong a take for you. That is perfectly fine. But we are reiterating the message from 9D, High Council of Sirius. And when they look down, they see that as medical torture. And so, in quotes, if a child is born with a disability, they lack the free will to have the highest and best path. So it's a free will issue for them. If a child is born with a disability, they lack the free will to have quality of life. So the ETs see this as the higher dimensional beings, our starkin, our cousins in other dimensions, see this as medical torture because we are preventing free will for the highest and best timeline. Have you ever seen a blind Pleiadian or an Arcturian in a wheelchair? DNA distortions simply do not exist in these societies. And if they do, they are rectified immediately. They're fixed immediately. They're not giving pills. They're not saying, oh, it's less about accommodations for the disability person and more about fixing the disability. Higher dimensional beings simply do not have DNA distortions whatsoever manifested physically. And yes, some grays chose to self mutilate themselves and then augment themselves with technology to try and do what can be done perfectly naturally. And they're at a point now where they cannot reproduce. They cannot clone themselves. They cannot have babies. They do not have sex organs. That has all been purged from their DNA record, purged from their gene pool because they chose to kind of focus on. I mean, I don't know if it was profit motive or just inbreeding or a combination of these things. I'm not a gray. Um, but yeah, that's kind of the road you go down when you're not fixing DNA distortions that lead to disabilities within your society. You don't.
Not only that, but I also do want to preface that in the SSP, I have heard from a couple of people in the SSP community talk about where people who had very, very highly advanced psychic abilities to the point where they can't control them in the SSP community or in the SSP programs, that they would purposely put them into bodies that have disabilities in order to control their psychic power or their power and sense, or basically to order to control them because they could not control them in the programs. So the only way to order to program them or to stop them from getting out of control is by putting them into disability
And
bodies.
the classic example of that is in Star Wars, Anakin Skywalker, right? So when we speak about this in a slide as well going forward, so I'm just going to touch on it quickly. But Anakin Skywalker was the chosen one in Star Wars, right? And then Darth Sidious said, Darth Sidious's plan was basically to confuse Anakin and then get him to be in this disabled state. Darth Sidious could have killed Anakin Skywalker at any time, but he didn't. He let Obi-Wan cut 3 of his limbs off. And then essentially Anakin Skywalker, through the help of Darth Sidious, becomes Darth Vader. And really, Anakin could have regrown those limbs and had limbs. There's technology for that in the story of Star Wars, as well as we have that technology today. The SSP has had this technology for many, many years. And so like there's not a reason why Anakin had to become Darth Vader, other than the fact that he was tricked by Darth Sidious, tricked by the dark side, into that disability. And Darth Vader is horribly angry and making terrible choices, separation from source where separation need not exist. So this is played out in mythology too. This is not a new concept. But yeah, we want to talk about the caduceus today. So the caduceus, it was on our thumbnail slide. It's the medical symbol you see on all the hospitals and ambulances and things. So the caduceus symbol symbolizes commerce, alchemy, and negotiation, not healing. So just a very easy Google search here. So essentially the true medical symbol, the correct ancient symbol for medicine is the rod of I'm gonna botch that word, but you can see it on the slide here. It's this rod of as
Is Septilus?
great. That's how you pronounce it. But anyway, that is the actual healing symbol, which features only one snake winding around a single unwinged staff. And he was the ancient Asphilius, oh God, whatever, was the ancient Greek god for healing and medicine. I don't speak Greek, right? Or Latin or anything. So that's the actual symbol. How the error happened. So the confusion largely stems from a historical mistake made in 1902 when a U.S. Army Medical Corps officer adopted the caduceus for the uniform insignia. Because of this, the caduceus is widely yet incorrectly used in today's medical badges, hospitals, uniforms, commercial pharmacies, particularly in the United States. So essentially, even the branding of these facilities is kind of tainted, distorted. And look, it's just a symbol, right? But the symbol it becomes the societal distortion. It all snowballs into the societal distortion, which ends up with people having disabilities. So another thing that's really important is hospitals are required to issue birth certificates and social security numbers. To be clear, your social security number incorporates you into the federal enslavement system owned by the Federal Reserve, owned by the Galactic Federation, and owned by Ashtar Command and the Federation in a larger complex. So previously, not as much after July 4th, but our Earth 606 has been under kind of Federation control with this Federal Reserve system, the printing of these fake fiat currencies, and the global trade system is based on these fiat currencies. So you can't really get resources unless you interact with these fraudulent currencies with your social security number incorporating you as a Federation corporation. To be clear, a corporation, you are not a corporation. A corporation are dead entities. They cannot breathe. They cannot vote. They cannot walk. They cannot use the restroom. They cannot go to the store. So you're not a corporation. You're not your social security number. You're just not. All right. So hospitals, in addition to all these distortions we brought up, a big distortion is they give you that social security number and kind of impress you into this corporate federation system where that doesn't need to happen at all. There's no reason for you to be incorporated. You're not a corporation. Corporations are dead entities. Why would you have to claim yourself as a dead entity to operate with a dead system? I mean, it just reeks of death. Um, so let's be positive here. So what would an ideal medical care situation look like? So preventative care is basically the entire game. In the US, it's not preventative care. You come into the hospital when you have an issue. So preventative care is not something doled out to the public at mass at all. And we would also like to see no profit-based medical care whatsoever. And I would also remark that, everything is energetic first and then physical. So energy healing and frequency-based healing with like the Rife machine, the Rife technologies from 1940 from Dr. Royal Rife. We've had these technologies for a very long time. Something like a med bed. I mean, the military has been using this for a very, very long time. The SSP has been using this for a very, very long time. They can regrow cut off limbs. The Germans can even regrow an entire body. If you simply have a head that's less than 4 months old, Penny Bradley speaks to this a lot in her podcast on YouTube. What's it, Knocked Off and Pilot? Essentially, she explains that as long as you take the head and it's less than 4 months old, you can regrow the whole body from just the head. So we have all sorts of fabulous frequency healing technology, and that's all done with frequency. It's just frequency. You just tell your DNA to regrow and it regrows. So there's no need for profit. There's no need for pills, generally speaking. Of course, speak with a licensed medical professional, whatever legal. We already did the disclaimer, but really, this all can be done with energy and frequency healing. No need to pay. And again, preventative care, if no problem exists in the first place, no reason to even go to that hospital. So prenatal care, which is when you're pregnant, you go into the doctor and kind of see if there are any disabilities or anything that could affect the baby's life from a lifelong point of view with disabilities. That's really important to see if disabilities exist.
We want number one thing is that if like dealing with rare or bizarre different type of diseases, that there would be proper research and things would be done with people's consents.
All consent based. To be
And
clear.
so if people want to be part of medical research or anything like that in order to help improve the medical industry or help improve medical research, it'll be all done by consent and not by backdoor stuff.
Yeah, and to be clear, from a higher dimensional point of view, beings living with disabilities cannot have the free will choice to have quality of life, to have their highest and best timeline. So that the ETs from higher dimensions consider a person with disabilities to be under some type of medical torture, societal-based medical torture. We're not saying the doctor's a torturer. We're not saying anyone did anything evil. We're not calling anyone evil. We're saying that on a societal level, it is torturous to have a person with disabilities because they lack free will. Um,
There has been numerous experiences by people in the UFO community talk about where they are taken by or just simply taken or abducted, where they have had medical procedures, like positive medical procedures done on them in order to help them have a better quality of life. So even though that there's a whole overwhelming stories of negative UFO stories, there is also an overwhelming and positive UFO stories where people have actually been cured or healed by UFOs as
Yeah,
well.
and by a consent-based positive rehabilitation, basically just using frequency healing, and we have those technologies. We've had them since the 1940s with Dr. Royal Wright. This is not something that's debatable. It actually works. So you can read the slide here about fetuses and stuff. We're not going to touch on that too much. Speak with a licensed medical professional if you are pregnant or any of these types of things. But by having a child with disabilities, they're living their life out. If this person with disabilities actually lives their life out, then society accepts the distortion into the DNA pool, right? So what we're saying is if someone with disabilities is kind of living their whole life out with that whole lifelong disability, really struggling to have quality of life, then that society is accepting that into the gene pool, into the collective consciousness. This perpetuates DNA distortions within the gene pool. That's why these higher dimensional beings are so anti these distortions, because by accepting them into the society perpetuates and snowballs those distortions, leading to even more and more distortions and birth defects. So also some beings with disabilities have children and pass on those disabilities. So prenatal testing should be really mandatory, should be really something that everyone is really, really, really interested in doing. Even if it's not mandatory, they should be really interested in doing it to preserve the integrity of a DNA gene pool. When you're in a collective consciousness, when I share DNA, you share DNA, and all those DNAs linked together to create our gene pool in a collective sense. If we are having people with disabilities, uh, um, we're perpetuating those distortions. We're making it worse for our children. We want our children to have a better life than we did. They cannot have a better life than we did if we're having children being born with disabilities. So the ETs and the higher dimensional beings, law of one based, highest and best timeline for all, they draw very, very clear lines here, and our society has just not drawn those lines yet. So maybe we sound like we're doing strong takes, but it's very obvious from the ninth dimensional point of view from the Syrians, and that's why they were telling us about this. To be clear, we are not saying people with disabilities should be murdered. We are not talking about murder. We are not talking about medically killing off anyone. We're not. That is never, never, never. That is taking away one's free will ability. But the thing is that people with disabilities are very unlikely to be able to ascend because of these disabilities. They are on an energetic level. It makes ascension really, really, really difficult. Not impossible, but very difficult. So these beings can live out their lives. We're doing a timeline split, so we're going from 3D to like there's going to be a 4D timeline, and then there's going to be a 5D timeline, and then there's going to be beings who make it to the 5D timeline and can go on to 6 and 7D, as the planetary resonance herself, Sophia, ascends, as Earth ascends to Tara to Gaia, if you want to think of it that way. These are all similar terms. So these beings with disabilities, they're not going to be killed. We're not calling for any killing, any murdering, no medical. I don't know what the word for it is, where they kill people in a hospital, or people can choose with consent to end their life. I don't know what that's called, and I don't really care. We're not here to talk about that. Seek a licensed medical professional for all those types of things, right? But from an energetic point of view, disabilities make it very, very, very hard to ascend, and the 4D timeline is going to be for people who have these types of disabilities and things and need time to work through them. And the 4D timeline is perfect for that. The Guardians, 4D isn't, I mean, it's not unnatural or anything, but typically, Earth is going from 3D, through 4D to 5D. So if you need help breaking down those distortions, you're going to be in that 4D timeline. So it's a complete blessing. It is free will to the highest order being upheld by having this 4D timeline for all these beings to heal. And it's not just going to be people with disabilities. There's going to be people with SSP trauma. There's going to be people who have done maybe war crimes or something evil. And they're not evil people, but they made bad choices, and they're going to have to figure those things out. And the 4D timeline is that space. So if disabilities are not addressed prenatally, it snowballs into ruining the DNA gene pool for all. To be clear, all the Guardian Alliance groups we've spoken with are clear on this. We have not met any Guardian Alliance group has said anything different to this. So they are all appalled by us as a species having these distortions, having these disabilities, having people living with these disabilities. In their race lines, disabilities do not exist. Whatever, do not exist whatsoever. Period. End of story. The 4D timeline will be able as our race line, the 4D timeline is our opportunity to heal all these distortions. So when everyone is going to 5D, they're not going to have distortions because 5D species do not have distortions like that. They simply do not. We cannot go back to this medical torture nonsense as a society. We're not calling anyone a torturer. It prevents ascension. Okay, and we Aria touched on this earlier, but do you want to read through this, Aria, or?
People can read. Take some
Yeah, you,
time.
you can read this, but essentially in the SSP, they used disability people. They would put souls into bodies with disabilities. They would punish their assets or their people who were out of control by putting their consciousness into disabled bodies. And so, even in a certain sense, the SSP thinks that it is kind of torturous to do this type of thing. It was a punitive member, is a punitive measure. So, again, we don't want to sit here and harp on the negative, and we're not trying to, trigger anyone or anything like that. But again, even in the SSP, they use this as a measure of torture. So, you know, we don't wish a torturous existence on anyone. We wish a free will opportunity to ascend, which is your birthright. Um, so we talked about this a little bit already. So our medical system is profit-based. It focuses on diagnosing you with a dis-ease, right? Dis-ease is just simply not being in a state of ease. It doesn't necessarily mean you have something that you're stuck with for life. A lot of times people they came in. I was diagnosed with like uh, certain types of I don't want to say too many words here, but I got diagnosed with certain things in my life and I got over them. And the doctor told me very clearly I was stuck with it for life. And I just don't believe that. Speak with your licensed medical professional, but that's not the take I took from it. And I have moved through those issues and I don't have those issues anymore. So this leads many people to believe they're disabled when they are just having some distortions in the field. Now, to be clear, there are people with physical distortions, physical disabilities, wheelchairs, bum leg, blind, deaf, all these types of things are maybe more permanent. Speak with a licensed medical professional. I'm not an expert on any of these things. But there's a profit motive to push, you have this is wrong with you, let's fix it with this pill. And that's not always correct, is what we're saying. This is not necessarily the case at all. It could be the case, but it's not necessarily the case with every instance. So Dr. Royal Rife in the 1940s discovered that certain frequencies can dissolve certain parasites and infections and diseases. So frequency healing is a technology used for medbed technology, which everyone has heard about in a conspiracy or two. So applying frequencies to you so that you can rid yourself of these field imperfections. So you're healing on an energetic basis. Everything is energetic before it's physical. So again, even if you have a disability, you are not broken. You are not a victim of some dis-ease. You are most likely having incoherences in your field. Your field is incoherent in some certain way, and they are presenting themselves with some fatal disease. There are people with disabilities, yes. Go speak with your licensed medical professional. Maybe you have something permanent. I don't have a white coat on, do I? So go handle that.
We just want to preface that you are not broken. You are not a victim of some disease. You're most likely have some incoherence in your field, and we just want to like preface and let people know that we want people to heal properly. We want to have a proper society. We understand that this is a very delicate and very triggering conversation, and that this is the reason why we're doing this work, is to have this type of discussion, and no one else in the community is talking about this. So we just want to bring this forward and have this discussion.
And the reason why it's not, let me finish. The reason why it's not such a prevalent narrative is because in order to get funding for medical research, you need to submit, essentially, there needs to be an outline for how this research will end up with a profitable medication, and then how we can sell that medication to the public and make a profit so the company can keep going. So again, when we're talking about a medical research being done, there has to be a profit motive for the medical research to even be funded. So the medical industry is just not focused on energetic healing. A lot of these things, a lot of these in quotes, diseases and things could probably be healed with energetic healing in ways that I'm not even aware of. The current medical industry is not aware of. Doctors are not informed of these things. We're not saying the doctors are evil or wrong or any of that. We're saying that simply the medical research is biased because there is a profit motive, and that snowballs into improper care. So I wanted to mention I've used the Spooky 2, which is a frequency healing device. There are 3 or 4 others that you can get. That it wasn't terribly expensive. Dan Winter. It has a number of these frequency healing devices. He has a YouTube channel, Dan Winter, and very, very good research on physics. He's not purely law of one, and I wish he would talk more about the law of one. And I guess he's not a guardian or something. I don't know his full story, but there are lots of these frequency healing devices. Indigo Angel was telling us how she was able to use a med bed when she's out in Sedona. These technologies exist. Frequency healing devices are around, and they're going to be more and more prevalent as more people realize that this research, our medical research industry, is tainted by profit motive because these medical companies have quarterly projections. They have shareholders. They have a fiduciary responsibility to the shareholders to make sure they are profitable. So yeah, let's move to the next slide. I think we have maybe a couple more.
No, that's it.
Are we sure? Okay, that's it. Great. So again, none of this is medical advice, financial, legal advice. Of course, speak with a licensed medical professional.
We understand that this presentation is very sensitive and very triggering to some people. We encourage people to come and contact us through our business emails. Due to the sensitive topic of this video, we're going to turn off the comments. And if
we have a weekly Q&A. If you want to submit feedback through that, we perfectly welcome to receive it. But what we don't want to have is people starting to be pushy about. We just don't want to start fights here where fights need not exist. And we want to make sure that people are, look, if you have an issue, you have a broken arm, you go to that hospital, right? You speak with a licensed medical professional. I don't know how to heal your broken arm with meditation. I simply do not. Are there maybe technology that can do that in the future? Perhaps. I have not seen one with my physical eyes. So we're still, can't give any medical advice of any kind. If you have an issue, speak with a licensed professional. We're very serious about this. Do not say, oh, Kavi told me to meditate it away. I'm not saying that at all. But we're saying from a macro point of view, these disabilities cause issues in our gene pool and keep beings from having free will choice to live their highest and best timeline and ascend to these higher dimensional realms.
Due to the sensitivity of this video and due to the fact we don't want this video to be taken down on YouTube, certain things have been altered or certain things have been left out of this presentation due to the sensitivity
Yep.
of YouTube copyrights or YouTube laws and stuff. So this is purely for YouTube
entertainment purposes only. Entertainment purposes only.
And please contact us through our business contacts. But thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll see you guys in the next video.
Yeah. Peace, love, sovereignty, sovereignty not saviors, and speak the eternal ELAYSA flame. Cheers.